Just imagine, 66 million years ago, the universe was preparing for a spectacle of cataclysmic proportions, a real turning point in the fate of the Earth. The protagonist? An asteroid coming from the south in an incredible rush, cutting across the sky at an acute angle, so fast that it would make the fastest bullet look like a snail in comparison. But what if I told you that this asteroid was on its way to causing the worst day ever recorded in the history of our planet? Now think about the power. This impact released an explosive energy greater than 10 billion. Yes, billion with a B, atomic bombs. Can you imagine that? For more than 20 minutes, the Earth was transformed into a boiling furnace, a heat so intense that even the idea of heat takes on a new meaning. Molten debris fell from the sky, setting fire to everything in its path. But nature had more surprises in store. Earthquakes shook the ground. Volcanoes erupted like never before, covering vast lands with lava. Western India? A sea of magma. And just when you think you've seen it all, huge clouds of dust cover the sky, stealing the sun's light for 15 years. Imagine that, 15 years of total darkness. The result of this catastrophe, an unrecognizable planet, where 75% of all species simply ceased to exist. The explosion would be so powerful that it would make Central America and the southern United States simply disappear in the blink of an eye. We're talking about 100 million lives lost in a matter of seconds. And the noise of that explosion? So deafening that it could be fatal to anyone within 930 miles, approximately 1,500 kilometers. Now imagine earthquakes so strong that the scale we use today could barely measure them. With magnitudes between 9 and 11, they would be more intense than any tremor ever recorded. And what about tsunamis? Gigantic waves, up to 328 feet, about 100 meters high, would sweep the coasts, flooding land up to 62 miles, about 100 kilometers, inland, a force capable of drowning more than 3 billion people. The debris thrown up by the collision would fall mostly on the United States, threatening the lives of hundreds of millions. For those far enough away to escape the immediate impact, the challenge would be to find refuge underground before the rains of molten debris began to fall. However, in the midst of this desolation, there were survivors. The crocodiles, those veterans of survival, plunged into the waters and did well, living as if nothing had happened. And the birds? Those with long beaks, who managed to catch food hidden in the ground, showed survival creativity, turning adversity into opportunity. But most intriguing of all, our ancestors, small mammals that looked more like shrews, found the key to survival in cunning, sneaking around in the shadows. What does this tell us about resilience, adaptation, and who knows, even our own existence? Could it be that, in the shadows of our ancestors, we can find inspiration to face the challenges the world presents us with today? Did you know that right now, under our feet, there is a hidden world? No, I'm not talking about lost civilizations, but something that looks like it's straight out of a science fiction movie. Millions of fallout shelters are scattered around the globe, waiting in silence. Switzerland, for example, looks like a tranquil nation with idyllic landscapes. But did you know that it is home to hundreds of thousands of these underground shelters? And it doesn't stop there. Entire cities, carved deep into the earth, exist in places like Derinkuyu in Turkey and Nushabad in Iran. These places are not just relics of the past. They could become our saviors, offering protection to millions in the event of a nuclear disaster. Just imagine, a safe haven, far from the horrors of the surface, waiting to be our shelter in times of need. But here comes the big but. While these shelters and underground cities may protect us from the immediate effects of a nuclear explosion, how prepared are they really? Think about it. Surviving the first few moments is one thing, but then what? Few of these shelters are designed to be self-sufficient for long periods. How would we cope with a lack of food, water, and fresh air for months or even years? In this scenario, Only a few special refugees, known as doomsday bunkers, would offer long-term security. These places, like the Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Pennsylvania, would be veritable fortresses. With 3-story buildings and even their own water reservoirs, these bunkers could house thousands of people. Interestingly, the exact number of people who could be accommodated in these shelters is a mystery. Meanwhile, other countries have also built their own versions of these bunkers, ensuring that, in theory, governments could continue operating for some time after the disaster. In addition, some of the world's richest people have chosen to take refuge in New Zealand, a place considered ideal for living self-sufficiently. There, luxury bunkers were built, equipped with years of supplies. But even with all these preparations, the real challenge would come in the long run. The gigantic cloud of dust generated by the impact would block out sunlight, resulting in the loss of crops all over the planet. Over time, food reserves would run out, and drinking water would become scarce due to contamination by acid rain. Faced with these conditions, hunger would emerge as the main threat to human survival, putting the lives of millions at risk. And what about the climate? With all the carbon dioxide released by the impact, there would be days when the thermometer would be more indecisive than us choosing which series to watch. But with determination and a dose of creativity, small groups of survivors could turn things around, betting on rationing and even guerrilla farming. Of course, life as we knew it would be drastically different. I'd even say we'd be living in the shadow of our glory days. Now, imagine if we had a spoiler of that future. If we knew what was coming, how would we prepare for this unimaginable challenge? Would we store cans of beans and learn about agriculture on YouTube? Or perhaps we'd create a survival library with books on how to identify edible mushrooms and build apocalypse-proof shelters? Yes, you heard right, fungi. Contrary to what many people think, mushrooms are not vegetables. They belong to the fungi kingdom. Some of us could become experts on fungi. These fascinating organisms don't need sunlight to thrive and love a good burnt area. And just for kicks, maybe it's time to add mushroom picking to your LinkedIn skill set, just in case. But seriously, in September 2022, NASA sent a satellite called DART on a mission against an asteroid, far out there, about 6.8 million miles away from Earth. And believe it or not, this explosive encounter was a success. The impact ended up changing the asteroid's course in around 32 minutes. Incredible, right? And in order not to miss any detail of this feat, the Hubble and James Webb Space Telescopes gave us the best images of all this cosmic dust. But there is a curious detail. The asteroid that NASA hit was very small, especially when compared to the big one that is said to have put an end to the dinosaurs. This colossal asteroid was more imposing than any skyscraper you've ever seen, imagining the largest man-made constructions becoming tiny in front of it. Just imagine the work involved in trying to change the course of such a giant. Some have even suggested using powerful lasers or even giant solar sails to nudge it in another direction. Fortunately, astronomical geniuses have already mapped all the large asteroids nearby, and by all accounts, we're safe. For now. But what if, out of nowhere, an asteroid appeared from outside the solar system, unannounced and at high speed? The time to act would be short, and the mission would be a race against the clock. The first thing to do? Evacuate everyone from the danger area that could possibly be hit. Then the idea would be to build safe underground cities with everything we need to survive, such as food and water, away from acid rain and earthquakes. We could even use geothermal energy from places like Iceland to keep us warm and connected. Have you ever thought about living in tunnel cities made from existing subways, or even starting a diet based on algae, which, let's be honest, might not be the dream menu, but it would keep us alive? And if even with all this effort, the situation became really critical, the last option would be to move to the moon. Yes, that's right. A lunar colony could be our space Noah's Ark. Oh, and you know what? In the midst of all this space madness, a NASA engineer decided to create a way to help us filter the flood of information we receive every day. Thus, Ground News was born, a platform that allows us to see different points of view on the same news. Who knew that, as well as asteroids and underground cities, our adventure would also include learning to navigate the sea of information on the internet? So tell me, if you knew that an asteroid was going to hit Earth in a year, what would you do?